I represented the Biden-Harris administration, and there was an immediate unwillingness to acknowledge the humanity of Palestinian life. When we saw a Palestinian child get stabbed in his home, when we saw Palestinian college students get gunned down in the streets because they were wearing keffiyehs and speaking Arabic, the Department of Education was nearly silent. What we are witnessing and what we have witnessed when it comes to the destruction of both Palestinian life and Palestinian education systems is wholly a genocide and a scholasticide, plain and simple.
The vast majority of people who you speak to behind closed doors will tell you what we're doing is wrong, what we're doing is harmful to America's own interests, what we're doing is against America's own laws. But I can't say that publicly. That's because what we have in this country is not a policy problem, it's a political problem.
We're gonna beat AIPAC at their own game.
Josh Paul and Tariq Abbas join us. They formed a group called A New Policy. We're gonna talk about what that is in a second, but Josh left the State Department in protest during the Biden years because of the Gaza policy. And Tariq did the same for the Education Department. So Josh and Tariq, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Oh, no problem.
Thanks, Cenk.
Yeah. So Josh, let me start with you. So why did you leave the State Department?
So I was working in something called the Bureau of Political Military Affairs, which is responsible for US arms exports and security assistance. And I left October 18th, 2023, at which point 3,500 people had already been killed in Gaza by American weapons. And I left because of the scale and scope of the harm that was being done, but also because when I put up my hand and said, this is wrong, this is harmful to America's interest, this is morally wrong, this is illegal, there was absolutely no willingness on the part of the Biden administration, the Blinken State Department, to even pause for a second to consider that. So I refused to be a part of it and I stepped down.
So let's talk about that a little bit more, Josh. So what happens specifically inside the State Department? Like there's procedures for example, human rights violations and what the State Department does with that. So was Blinken and were Blinken and Biden basically going outside of regular procedures? And is that what frustrated you?
Yeah, there's always been a double standard when it comes to Israel, and that's been a long-lasting problem. So for example, there's a law, the Leahy law, which says we can't provide US security assistance to gross human rights violators. When it comes to Israel, there's always been a different process for that, a higher level of authorization needed to move the ball forward. And that's why no Israeli unit has ever been prohibited from receiving US assistance, despite a lengthy record of human rights violations. In the context of Gaza, the entire process that was supposed to be there for arms transfers reviews was flipped on its head by the Biden administration. It's supposed to be a bottom-up process where everyone looks at the policies, looks at the legal concerns, and then eventually maybe gets to yes. In this case, it was Blinken essentially saying, you will get to yes, you will approve these weapons today, you will approve whatever Israel requests. And that's not only highly abnormal, it's highly illegal.
Yeah, they work for Israel. I mean, this is so obvious. The only people who don't see that is corporate media. And so corporate media also works for Israel, so that makes sense. So look, no ally has as many human rights violations as Israel does. And because of what's happened, the genocide in Gaza, it's not even close. They've lapped every other ally, right, combined. And so when you say, even so, we're never going to sanction them, and even so, it requires a higher level authorization, aren't you basically admitting that our government works for the Israeli government? Because like Canada's a special ally, UK's a special ally, they're as good an allies as we can have, but you don't need higher level authorization to sanction them or criticize them, do you, Josh?
Well, I think, no, first of all, you don't need a higher level authorization to sanction any other country in the world. But I think when you talk about the billions of our taxpayer dollars that are going to Israel, the weapons, the harm that we're doing, and of course the diplomatic harm we're doing to ourselves and to the entire international system, I think the question you have to ask is, this clearly isn't in the service of the American people or the American national interest.
No, it's obviously not. They're selling us out. So Tariq, let's talk about the Education Department. So tell me why you left there.
Plain and simple, I had to pick between my title and my integrity, and I picked my integrity 100 out of 100 times. It was pretty clear from the very beginning. I was a political appointee. I served at the pleasure of the president. I represented the Biden-Harris administration, and there was an immediate unwillingness to acknowledge the humanity of Palestinian life. When we saw a Palestinian child get stabbed in his home, when we saw Palestinian college students get gunned down in the streets because they were wearing keffiyehs and speaking Arabic, the Department of Education was nearly silent. The secretary did not do nearly enough. We had numerous conversations on the inside. And it was what was clear to me, both as a representative of the government, but also as a Palestinian American, was that my own humanity was being sidelined, and someone needed to speak out. Someone needed to say what was being unwilling to be talked about inside the administration. And so a few weeks after Josh left, I did the same, and I never looked back.
Yeah, so now through the Biden and Trump administrations, Israel has destroyed every college and university in Gaza. They've destroyed almost all of the schools in Gaza. And of course, our education department and our State Department has done nothing but kiss their ass while they do these horrific war crimes. So, but Tariq, we hear from time to time, oh, no, it's okay. Biden is kinder and more empathetic, and he's such an empathetic guy. And so he, like maybe mean old Republicans might side with Israel, but Biden, he's gotta have American interests, and he's just being warm-hearted, right? Is that the Biden that you saw when you were working there?
It's not, and I'll say that the empathy extended only so far, and it stopped short of Palestinians. And what I'd say to the people that would say that Republicans are the ones that won't acknowledge Palestinian life, well, I'd call Joe Biden an old guard Republican as well. What we are witnessing and what we have witnessed when it comes to the destruction of both Palestinian life and Palestinian education systems is wholly a genocide and a scholasticide, plain and simple. This has been systematic destruction of the Palestinian history in Gaza, and it has been designed to completely uproot the historical significance of an entire people. It is wrong on every level, and the fact that Joe Biden was the architect of everything that happened, the financier of everything that we witnessed, and refused to do anything, allowed for what the Trump administration has done since Donald Trump won the election. And I would go as far as to say is Joe Biden is the reason that Donald Trump has become president and has been able to do everything that he has done, not just to the Palestinian people, but also to the academic system and our education department's dismantling over the last 10 months.
Yeah, Joe Biden is among the worst of us. First of all, the reason he did all this is AIPAC was his #1 donor throughout his 200-year career. They gave him $11 million, and that one is not hyperbole, well over $11 million that we know of, let alone the dark money and the super PACs, etc. And so he totally worked for Israel and did not work for the American people. He betrayed us. And then he opened the door for Trump to do even more, because he raised the bar. Like, even all of these atrocities and genocide is good enough for Democrats, so you can do more, Donald Trump. And he, in every way, aided and abetted the war crimes of Israel. He proudly declared himself a Zionist. And then not only that, of course, he had no business running. He handed the country to Trump. And he didn't mind doing that because he's egotistical, and he's a terrible, slimy politician. Okay, that's my opinion. All right, so Josh, tell me about new policy. What is it, and what are you guys trying to accomplish?
So what we are trying to accomplish is a change in American politics when it comes to US policy towards Israel and Palestine. Look, I know from the people I talked to in the State Department before and since I left, and Tariq and I both know from talking to officials, elected officials, congressmen, senators, that what we face here is not a policy problem. The vast majority of people who you speak to behind closed doors will tell you what we're doing is wrong, what we're doing is harmful to America's own interests, what we're doing is against America's own laws. But I can't say that publicly. That's because what we have in this country is not a policy problem, it's a political problem. And to address a political problem, you need a political solution. That's what a new policy is, through lobbying, advocacy, and campaign finance in support of candidates for office who are going to shift the dial, who are going to move the ball forward, who are going to stand up both for American law, American interests, and for humanity to that extent. That is what we are here to do, to provide that infrastructure and that real political power to shift American politics so we can get this into a better place.
So Josh, why can't people actually stand up for America? Why must they bow their heads to Israel when they're inside the US government? Is it because of pro-Israel thugs that are in the government that would have them canceled? Is it because of pro-Israel thugs in corporate media who would then smear them as anti-Semitic and try to ruin their lives? So that's my opinion, but I'm looking at it from the outside. You tell me from the inside. What are the pressures inside the US government to loyally serve Israel instead of our country?
Well, I think thugs is the right word, because at the end of the day, you have a lot of people who are afraid to say what they know to be true, because they know that, or they fear that it will be the end of their careers if they do it. And I'm not just talking about career civil servants, I'm talking about political appointees, I'm talking about elected officials. And that's what we've got to break. That's the incentive structures or the punishment structures, I would say, that have been taking our politics and our policies so far off track. And yeah, there is a degree of thuggishness to it. In fact, when you look at some of the tactics that AIPAC uses with congressional staff, with elected officials, it's downright thuggishness, and that's not in America's interest. But if we're going to fix that, we have to create new incentive structures. We have to make, and we're beginning to see this already, but we have to make support for change a winner. And it is becoming that in American politics. Now we have to push that through.
Yeah, so let me ask one more for you, Josh. If you're in the State Department and you decided that, you know what, you just absolutely love, you can pick any country, Estonia, Paraguay, or China, Russia, Venezuela, right? And you decided, you know what, I'm going, even though they're committing human rights violations, I'm gonna bury it. I'm not gonna apply the law to this country because I love this country, whichever that foreign country is. I love Estonia, so I want them to be able to commit human rights violations, and I will bend American law to their favor. And by the way, there's a State Department report. I'm gonna spike it. I'm not gonna let my superiors see that because I love Estonia and I don't want them to harm Estonia. So I'm just gonna cover up anything from the State Department that says that. Is that illegal?
Well, first of all, you'd be out on your ass in seconds. That's not the way it works, and there's plenty of oversight and checks and balances, even within the State Department, that prevent that sort of behavior typically. The problem is when it comes to Israel, there is this overwhelming set of incentives and political pressure that essentially push through whatever Israel wants, and that repress any effort at bringing it in line or in a more balanced way with American interests and with American laws. So no, that wouldn't work in any other context.
But for Israel, it's okay. You could do anything you want. As we reported earlier in the show, there's advisor to the ambassador, our ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, and he is spiking reports coming out of the State Department. He is changing the reports and changing American policy unilaterally and saying that America is in favor of Israel having Judea and Samaria, which is definitely not American policy. But something you would get fired for and might even get arrested for if you did it for another country, because it's Israel. No, he's celebrated. And
let me just tell you something on that, Cenk. I mean, there's a Inspector General of the State Department just put out a confidential report that the Washington Post has reported on, and it says that if the State Department was going to start working through the list of Israeli human rights violations from the last couple of years, it would be a multi-year process just to work through that backlog. But guess what? The State Department is probably never going to start even working through those reports.
Because the people at the State Department work for Israel and not America. This is super obvious to anyone who isn't bought by the Israelis. Okay, Tariq, how is new policy going to win? Help me understand like the strategy and the details of how you wind up supporting candidates or anyone else that is actually for America and not for any other country.
I mean, plain and simple, we're going to beat AIPAC at their own game. At the end of the day, American politics runs on money. But AIPAC, a mask has come down. Everyone has seen what they stand for and how they're actually working against American interests, working against American politicians, working against the American people. So the way that you win is by building a systematic effort, real infrastructure in politics to be able to support American politicians that are going to actually fight for American interests, that are going to be America first. And I say that almost tongue in cheek, but we need Democrats and Republicans that are going to actually prioritize the interests of their communities, the rising costs for healthcare, the lack of nutrition assistance, the lack of education infrastructure, above sending billions of dollars to a foreign government that uses those dollars to harm children, to destroy schools, and to undermine our own national security. It doesn't make any sense. And we don't have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to do it. We have the American people on our side. And if AIPAC has 5 million members, I guarantee you there are 50 million Americans who feel increasingly strongly against what AIPAC stands for and want to support candidates. So what we're doing is we're vetting those candidates. We're vetting them not just for their policy alignment on these issues, we're vetting them for their actual capability to be able to win elections. And when you go to our website and see candidates that align with your values, you can support them directly through our campaign finance infrastructure, so that when they get that money that you are going to give them anyway through Act Blue, that money is now going to say, this is about Palestine. And it's going to tell Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and the DNC and the DS. It's going to tell everyone that actually there is real money that is going to replace whatever AIPAC has been doing, whatever those billionaire Republican donors that have been trying to control your politics. It is going to tell them that there is actually an infrastructure to support better policy positions, and you don't have to be bought and paid for by a special interest lobby that is making you work against your own communities.
Yeah, so I've been saying Americans first. I ran it by a conservative we had on the other day on this program, Dan McKnight, who represents Defend the Guard. He's like, oh, I like that a lot, right? So it gets rid of some of the baggage of America first. Some people love it, some people hate it, and a lot of people are not sure exactly what it means. But Americans first is crystal clear. And who could possibly be against Americans first? Oh, right, Israel first. That demands that we all work for Israel. And then, but if we say we're occupied, they say, how dare you? You should all be canceled. Anyone who disagrees with Israel should be fired, right? But we don't control anything. Okay, well, that's your opinion. So let me understand, Tariq, a little bit more about the infrastructure. You mentioned infrastructure there. So if people go to your website, that's anewpolicy.org, anewpolicy.org. So are they going to see the candidates that are free of Israel's influence, and can they donate to them? Can they find out their policies? What do you have there?
Yeah, so if you go to anewpolicy.org, that is our primary organization. It is a lobbying organization. It's a nonprofit. You can support, you can become a member. To do this work, we need as many people, as many Americans as possible to be part of this movement. So please join us at act.anewpolicy.org/membership. If you go to our PACs page, which is our sister organization that allows us to provide that direct campaign support to candidates, that's anewpolicypac.org. You can find candidates on the website right now. We're adding new candidates every day. We have dozens more in the queue, and we've interviewed over 150 candidates to date. We're going to be talking with more every single day because there's always more people that are announcing that they're running for federal office. We want to be able to identify as many of those viable opportunities as possible so that millions of Americans have somewhere to go to support those candidates. And these are going to be candidates that both are aligned on the substance. These are candidates that are going to speak to your values and people who have the capability of really winning these elections. These are not sure things by any stretch, but with your support, they will be successful. And that's why we need to build this type of infrastructure. That's what it's going to take to be able to transform American politics away from this Israel first mentality.
Yeah. So look, on this show, we try to come up with different ideas on how to get our government back, how to get our democracy back. And it's not just about Israel. The donors have taken everything. Big pharma, big oil, defense contractors. They're robbing us blind on a daily basis. I loathe it, I can't stand it, right? And neither can the American people now, and we're fighting back. So Israel's just the tip of the iceberg. So we'll put their links down below in the description box for people to check out. Josh, we're also asking everybody, look, we're trying to do this peaceful, nonviolent, political, rhetorical revolution against this corrupted system. So what's your sense of what would be the most effective way to effectuate that revolution? What should people do to try to get their government back?
So first of all, I have to say that I think we're in a tough spot as a country. I think that we have systemic and structural issues that are going to be very hard to overcome. But for as long as we can, we've got to try and make the system work. And to do that, I think we all need to play our role in politics. We all need to stand up and speak out and bring uncomfortable conversations into uncomfortable places. I think a lot of the time people back off and don't want to have those engagements around the water cooler, don't want to be the first to say an uncomfortable truth. I think that is a very important part of what we have to do. And the other thing we have to do is organize. We have to build coalitions. Right now, there are so many stovepipes, and that's the way the system likes it. They like each of us to be in our little stovepipe, isolated from other Americans who are also struggling, other Americans who are also facing economic challenges, social challenges. We need to find those points of intersectionality that bring us together, so that if I go to the Hill and I'm arguing for Palestine, I'm also arguing that Black Lives Matter. I'm also arguing that deportation shouldn't be carried on against people because of their identity. I'm also arguing that the environment matters, because all of these things are connected.
Yes, and by the way, also I would argue arguing for right-wing Americans, independent Americans, every kind of American, because they're all affected by these policies. Either we have the money or Israel has the money. Either we have the money or it goes in subsidies for oil companies. And so this is in the interest of every American to stop this robbery. And so, Tariq, over to you. Okay, so what do you think? And give me. I put it this way for you: magic bullet. You can effectuate. You can press a button and it happens. What would you do to fix the current corruptness?
I'd take money out of politics, but that's not the world that we're in. So that's not something that I can just magically do. At the end of the day, the money is the thing that continues to corrupt how our politicians act and operate. If money was not a factor, and they actually had to win votes and money couldn't influence those votes, they would actually work for Americans. They would fight for populist issues. They would not allow corruption to root itself so deeply into the infrastructure of our political system. So that's what I would do. In the meantime, we have to play within the system that we have, and that system necessitates providing that financial resources to the candidates that are going to be most aligned with you. And there are people out there who are going to fight for you, fight for your issues. We have to be able to support them. We have to give them the resources so that people can learn about them and know who they are. And I think that there are a lot of people who are ready to see real change, a lot of people who are putting their own names on the line, putting their own careers on the line to be able to fight that fight. And we have to be there to support them and to work with them every single day.
Yeah, when I ask that question, almost every person answers money in politics. So we all know what the problem is, and if you put it in a poll, it gets 80 to 90%, well, sometimes 93%, saying, yeah, get money out of politics. That's obviously the answer. And yet, weirdly, the people who get the money in politics, the politicians, and the people they pass it on to, corporate media, never mention that. And they're among the 7% who say money in politics is great. We love being bribed, and we love receiving those bribes. But you guys are conspiratorial. All of America, over 90% of America is conspiratorial. You think that politicians would just work for millions of dollars given to them? Yeah, that's what we think. We think they're almost all corrupt, at least I do. I'll speak for myself. All right, but look, a new policy is trying to give you a new batch of politicians who are not corrupted. So I love any group doing that. So good to have you guys in the fight. We appreciate you. And most of all, guys, both of you, Josh and Tariq, the fact that you left the Biden government and administration actually speaks volumes for you, because I know the Democratic circles, and in Democratic circles, that's heresy of the highest order, right? And that'll burn your career. And in the old days, it would have been unthinkable. And when you guys did it, Biden had not lost his power yet. The Wizard of Oz had not been revealed. So you were heretics, you were rebels, and you did it on behalf of the American people and to do the right thing and to do what is moral. And I can't appreciate you enough for that. Thank you guys.